Even when I pulled into the long-term parking lot next to the pier, my thoughts wandered. Why the hell am I going on a cruise? I hated boats. Well, it's not really hatred, more like a healthy rejection. Okay, we're kind of friends. I mean, I tell you my story and you listen to it, so I can be honest. I'm damn scared of being on the high seas. No matter how big the boat is, I'm afraid. In fact, if I had to be at sea, I would prefer a small boat. In a small boat, there is less chance of drowning. You're closer to the water. Since you're going to end up in the water anyway, it makes more sense to be closer to it. Maybe it's all those damn boat movies that are to blame. Have you noticed how every damn boat movie ends or starts with the boat sinking? Think about it. The Poseidon Adventure, Gilligan's Island, and especially Titanic, the damn boat sinks in all of them. And here I am, on what should have been the happiest day of my life so far. Today, I married the girl of my dreams. Only 2 hours had passed since our wedding, and I was already getting ready to board this damn boat. The whole idea filled me with horror. Only the hum of my Mustang's powerful engine calmed me. Looking out of the parking lot windows, all I could see was a boat. Jesus, she was huge. I've been reading the specs on this thing since we booked our honeymoon on it. The numbers simply did not convey its greatness. This thing was a floating city. I knew it was big, but this thing was fucking huge. When you read something like 181 feet long, you think, okay, it's long. But let's imagine this on a real scale. This boat is almost as long as 4 football fields side by side. It's almost a quarter-mile long, so this damn boat is longer than the street you live on. Its weight is approximately 225,000 tons. Okay, guys, do the math for yourself. It's about 450 million pounds. I have no words. All I can think about is how much it would hurt if someone dropped that boat on your foot. I don't think even the Incredible Hulk could lift that boat without a hernia. This boat is 272 feet tall at its highest point, so even if you jumped off it during a storm, with or without a life jacket, you'd be as dead as a disco hitting the water that fast. I don't want to get on this damn boat. I know for sure that my life will never be the same again. So why am I doing this? I do it for the same reasons that all men do things. Yes, there is a woman involved. In my case, it's Daniel Mason, or Danny. She is my ex-fiancée and current wife. Danny is beautiful. There are no other words. She is tall, with long blonde hair and large green eyes. She worked as a secretary for one of my friends, and I fell in love with her from the first meeting. My name is Caleb Storm. No, it's actually not my fault. My mother was extremely religious. Unfortunately, she died when I was very young. I never really got to know her. But I know it was probably for the best because I gave up on church almost immediately. Neither my father nor both sets of my grandparents could convince me to go there. So, back to the present. Danny and I collected our bags from the taxi that followed us from the hotel where we snuck out during our reception. There was no way we could fit all these bags into the trunk of my Mustang. For me, like most guys, I travel light. But Danny seemed to have an entire beauty salon in her suitcases. She took out her BlackBerry and texted her best friend Emma, who was also on the cruise. And yes, I paid for Emma to come with us too. They have been roommates ever since, and Emma just ended her relationship with her last boyfriend. It was an emotional blow for poor Emma. So Danny thought she should come with us. After all, from now on, it will be just the two of us. So why not have one last adventure with old Emma to cap off their time together? She acted like she and Emma wouldn't be friends anymore after this. I didn't understand this myself. Danny I tried to explain to me, saying that now that we were married, she couldn't hang out with people like Emma. She needs to connect with people like us. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you, I'm pretty rich. Well, I'm not very rich myself, but my family is. I went to top schools, got a degree in finance, and got a job as an investment banker. I have a good salary and I'm frugal, but sometimes I don't mind spending. So maybe in Danny's eyes, we have to hang out with a certain set of people, and Emma doesn't fit in anymore. I hope she stops thinking like that soon, but I married her, so I'll let her play queen for a day until she comes out of it. It turned out that Emma was still at our reception. She will arrive here before the ship leaves in an hour. I wanted to get there early so I could get used to the thing a little before it started moving. This boat has 16 passenger decks. There are bars, nightclubs, shops, a casino, a gym, and even a jogging track. We checked in, Danny holding my hand the entire time. She was so beautiful. Our cabin was beautiful too. It contained a bed with a lace canopy hanging from the ceiling. Danny ran around the room, looking at everything. I sat on the edge of the bed and just watched her. Her joy and enthusiasm made me feel great sharing it with her. Suddenly, without looking at me, she threw herself on the bed, knocking me over. She showered me with kisses and told me several times that she loved me. Before I knew it, her skirt was on the floor and she was pulling my pants down. Looking at Danny at that moment, I felt strange. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it felt like emptiness. My father and grandfathers on both sides always told me that when you meet the one, you'll know it. Danny and I had been together for almost a year, and I probably felt comfortable with her and wanted to marry her. But I had never experienced anything like this. She looked at me in confusion. "What's wrong, Cal?" she asked. Without realizing it, I just passed out and lost my erection while she was sucking it. "Sorry, honey," I said. "I just noticed the boat was moving." "Oh, damn," she said. "I need to text Emma and make sure she's on board. Damn, I wanted to take some pictures of us leaving the dock. See what you've done. You brought me here to seduce my virtue." Danny," I said. "We haven't really done anything yet." "But wait until you see what I'm going to do to you later," she smirked. "And what are we going to do for the rest of your life? But now I really need to get on deck and see what it's like. I've never been on a ship. I am so excited." Like a hurricane, she got dressed and grabbed her camera. "Come on, dear," she said plaintively. I followed her. As we walked towards the deck, I retreated into my thoughts. I knew I liked Danny. She was very attractive. She had all the qualities that men like in a woman on a superficial level. She had large breasts, although she did not have them from birth. You know what I mean? No woman is born with huge breasts. Some grow them, others buy them. Danny had a second option. It didn't bother me, and she was open about it. She also had rhinoplasty. She used collagen for her lips. She had a tummy tuck and what I believe was hair improvement. Her hair was dyed, and she had hair extensions. Danny called it leveling the situation. According to her, if I didn't mind her removing all of her hair at the bottom, then I shouldn't mind adding some on top. She was also extremely sexy. I never had to drag Danny to bed. I also never had to persuade her. She just needed a hint. In some cases, it didn't even depend on where we were or what we were doing. All my friends thought that Danny was the most beautiful woman they had ever seen and that I would be a fool to let her go. Like I said, I really liked her. Maybe all this magic is just a fairy tale. After all, I've been in relationships before, and I've never experienced anything like this. And I liked Danny more than anyone else I'd ever dated. So I followed her to the main deck. We found a place near the railing and watched the shore slowly recede into the distance. I was fine as long as I didn't look down. Damn, that was so far down, and there was so much damn water between me and the land. I felt a little sick. I had barely pulled myself together when I realized Danny was talking to me. She wanted me to take a photo of her near the railing. She handed me the camera and I tried to focus on her. As soon as I succeeded, the hand passed in front of the camera. I tried to focus again. This time someone pushed me. I turned around to see the smiling face of Emma, Danny's best friend. "Hey, sailor, how about you and I go back to my cabin?" she told me enthusiastically. "Oh my God," she exclaimed theatrically. "You're married. Please tell me you're not married to that old woman by the railing." "I'm afraid so," I laughed. Danny came up to us. They started an animated conversation, which I was already spared from. "Hey," Emma suddenly asked, "weren't you supposed to lock yourself in your cabin and have sex for the first 3 or 4 days of the cruise? How the hell are you going to have a bunch of kids if you don't practice?" "That's exactly what I was thinking," I said. "But your friend insisted that we come out here because she's never been on a ship." "Hey," Danny said, "we have the whole cruise and the rest of our lives to do this. I'm excited. Everything is different. I'm a married woman and I'm at sea. This is all new to me. Besides, Cal has already done everything he can with me." Thanks for sharing, Danny," Emma said. "And Cal, thank you for letting me come with you. That was very nice of you for someone you barely know." "You're welcome," I said. "You're practically family, Emma. You're my wife's best friend." It was strange that Emma seemed to appreciate the trip more than Danny. Perhaps it was simply because Danny and I were already used to each other, so she thought that because of our money, she was just entitled to such things. "Honey, Emma and I are going to go and explore the ship. Maybe we'll do a little shopping," Danny said. "I know you want to go and find the gym and check out the treadmill." She looked at me with a sparkle in her eyes. Then she came over and kissed me on the lips. Just like with other women, she told me sternly, "You can look, but don't touch. Don't lift one damn barbell. Don't take one damn step. I want you to leave every iota of your energy for me tonight, not on some gym floor, got it?" I smiled and nodded. "Seriously, Cal," she said, "it's not too early for us to be thinking about starting our family. The sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. The only reason I can think I won't be pregnant by this time next year is because we will already have our first child and we are working on the next one." I returned to our cabin after that. Being on deck and seeing all that damn water wasn't doing anything good for my well-being. I took the map of the ship they gave us and looked where the gym was. I went to check out the gym and looked at the selection of machines and weights. It's not like I'm a bodybuilder or anything. In fact, at 5'9" and 170 pounds, I was on the smaller side of the equation. But I have been involved in sports and have been involved in various sports all my life. Exercising regularly was one way to relieve the stress that my busy job created. After I left the gym, I checked the map and was surprised to find that the treadmill was on one of the upper decks. It didn't make sense to me. Since each successive deck had a smaller surface area, the walkway could be larger and more stable if it were on the lower deck. I tried to explain this to one of the crew members who helped me find the path, and he just laughed. "Most people on the ship are here to relax and have fun," he said. "The areas around the main and large decks have a lot of foot traffic at all times of the day and most of the night hours. You would have problems trying to walk or jog with all those people around. So we isolate it to prevent accidents and give you a cleaner path." It really made sense. If you don't feel comfortable here, you can always run on one of the treadmills at the fitness club, he suggested. Also, very few people actually use the treadmill. Maybe they'll do a lap or two if they feel like they've had too much, but most just put their exercise habits aside or take a break from them while they're on board. His cheerful expression and confidence in what he said made me believe that he thought I would probably do the same. I don't think he realized how obsessed I was with running. For the next hour or so, I practiced walking around the ship, trying not to feel like I was going to puke every time I approached the railing. After some time, I was able to walk right up to the railing and even look down at the rushing water near the back and sides of the ship. Indeed, the movement of the ship through the water was barely felt. It was almost as if we were still standing at the dock. I walked around the ship from one end to the other, trying to adapt. It was really beautiful here. The sun was just starting to set. Everywhere you looked, there were happy, smiling people trying to get the most out of their time on the ship. There were people of all ages and races. There were families and single people. But one thing we all had in common was that none of us lived here. We were all on vacation. I became interested in watching people and eavesdropping on snippets of their conversations. It was similar to what I did in the office, trying to get an edge over my clients. If I heard them talk to each other about problems in their businesses that could affect their ability to pay us back on our loans, that was a plus for me. There were several occasions when I left clients in my waiting room and eavesdropped on their conversations in preparation for our meetings. They often discussed what they should and should not reveal during our meetings. I heard one client remind their assistant not to mention anything about the fact that they expected to file bankruptcy in less than a month. I was very nice to them and treated them to the best coffee and snacks the bank had to offer before I turned them away. My boss was furious until I explained to him what I had heard. And in fact, one of our competitors gave them a loan, and a big one. Less than a month later, the company filed for bankruptcy. My boss and I laughed until we cried. The owner of the company was apparently looking for a large loan so that he could provide himself with a golden parachute that would protect him when his company went bankrupt. So I wandered around the ship, eavesdropping on people telling each other what fun they were having and their plans for the evening and the next day. I've heard people talk about how the trip may have saved their marriages and how much they love each other. I also heard something that shook me to my core. I had just rounded the corner when I heard two familiar voices. "You're so lucky, Danny. Cal is a great guy," the first voice said. "Yes, he's fine," said the second. I was shocked. After months of Danny professing her undying love for me, it hurt to hear that I was okay. For some reason, I started recording their conversation on my iPhone. That way, if we ever fight, I can lose it to her. "What do you mean nothing like that? He's the sweetest guy we've both ever met. He's also handsome, and he's not the kind of guy who would ever hit you or steal from you. I thought you loved him." "Yeah, I guess," Danny said. "If you don't love him, what was all your talk about having his children?" Emma asked. "God, Emma, are you stupid or what? I signed a prenup to prove that I'm not just after his money. The only way I can get around this prenuptial agreement is if I give birth to his child. Then I can get a good allowance if I stay with him or not." After that, they fell silent. "Emma, why are you looking at me like that?" asked Danny. "Damn, it's not my fault. I've dated so many guys who just wanted to get everything they could from me, so I thought it was time for me to get my own." "But Danny, he's a really good guy," Emma said. "He gets something out of it," Danny said. "I give him everything he wants. Sometimes I give him more than he wants." "That's why you didn't stop sleeping with other guys, right?" said Emma. "What I do when he's not around is none of his business," Danny said. "Besides, just look. In a few years, he'll be entertaining his secretary and ignoring me." "I don't think he's that kind of guy," Emma said. "To hell with it, Emma," Danny said. "When I'm done with him, I'll try to arrange it so you can have it. I just want to live my life and have fun. I just want to have what I want and not have to work like a damn slave to get it. I saw my chance and took advantage of it." "It's just wrong," Emma said. "He loves you. He doesn't force you to do anything you don't want. But you're making him pay for what other guys did to you. It's not fair." "Emma, all men are the same. If you've met one, you've met them all. If you give them a chance, they'll all screw you over. The only difference between them is the numbers in their bank accounts," Danny said. I retreated and returned to our cabin. When I got there, I changed into something I could wear in the evening. About an hour later, my iPhone beeps that I had a text message. There was no cell service on the ship, but we had internet access, and my phone used the internet for texting and email. I looked at the message. "Where are you, dear?" It was from Danny. I didn't even bother answering this. It hurted me. Okay, I guess it was a little hypocritical to pretend that my heart was broken. In the end, I was also trying to figure out if I really loved her. I think I really liked her, but I wasn't sure what love was. I couldn't say for sure that I loved her, but I couldn't definitely say that I didn't love her. I guess I had never really been in love, so I didn't know how I should feel. But I have never cheated on her, and have been faithful to her in every way since we met. She couldn't say the same on either occasion. She has been cheating on me all this time, obviously, and entered into the relationship with selfish intentions. Her only interest was in money. I decided that I would just pay dearly for this lesson. As soon as we get back, I'll file for an annulment. I won't even need a divorce because she was insincere the whole time and the marriage lasted less than a week. According to the terms of our prenuptial agreement, if the marriage lasts less than 3 years and we have no children, she will receive nothing. I spent the evening wandering around the ship, watching people and trying to fill the hole in my heart. Around midnight, I returned to our cabin. Danny was there with a couple of the crew members and Emma. "Caleb, where the hell have you been?" she screamed. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. The security officers who were going to organize a quiet search for me smiled and began to retreat. "Sorry, I was at the clinic," I said. "I guess I should have told you that I don't like ships or boats or whatever it is. I got really seasick. They gave me something to calm my stomach, and apparently it put me to sleep right away. I'm still nauseous." The security officers laughed. "Told you so," said one. "Usually about 10% of passengers feel unwell in the first 2 days. About half of them end up flying home." "Darling, why didn't you tell me about this?" asked Danny. Her fake concern was really convincing. "We could fly or do something else." "Because I love you, Danny," I said. Hell, if she could lie, then so could I. "You wanted to go on a cruise so badly. I would do anything for you, so getting used to the boat is nothing." "Oh," Emma cried. She glared at Danny and shook her head. "I'll go and lie down," I said. Danny just nodded. "I'll be there soon, honey," she said. As soon as the door slammed, I strained my ears, trying to hear their conversation. "Danny, you're a bitch," Emma hissed. "You don't deserve it. I hope it all comes back to bite you in the ass. Then it will hurt." Emma. "Don't forget your place, honey," Danny hissed back. "If it weren't for me, you'd be sitting in that same little apartment crying in your beer because yet another loser dumped you. And it hurts to bite anywhere." "Yeah, but your ass is the only thing on you that hasn't been lifted or implanted," Emma chuckled. "It's the only real thing about you, so it will hurt more." A few minutes later, Danny cheerfully entered the bedroom of our cabin. She began to take off her clothes and lean towards me. Her breasts slipped out of her top and hung above me like 2 ripe melons ready to be picked. "Come and get it, darling," she purred. Honestly, I was going to spend the rest of the trip using it. I don't mean making love to her tenderly and passionately. I mean just sex. I thought she deserved it after what she tried to do to me. After all, why should I go without sex? As long as we're here, we're married. I see no reason why my sex life should suffer because the woman I thought loved me turned out to be nothing but a gold digger. After all, she was literally offering herself to me. She got a good life and no more stress. I got sex. It was a business deal, nothing more. The only problem with the deal was that both parties were not aware of its terms. From now on, I intend to treat it as such. But that night, I was too hurt to do anything but lie in that bed and wonder what I had done to deserve this. I've been a good guy all my life. I have never forced myself on a woman. I never took anything that didn't belong to me. I helped whenever I could, to whomever I could. And throughout my life, I have worked very hard at both my education and my career. Just because I was fortunate enough to be in a position where that hard work paid off financially, it didn't make me a bad guy or a target. Damn her. "Danny, I'm sorry," I said, "but I really feel bad." "Oh, dear," she said sadly, "do not worry about it." She took off the rest of her clothes and crawled under the covers with me. I was surprised. I lay in bed with this body and did not show the slightest sign of reaction. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I looked across the bed at the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I wondered what it was about her that attracted me in the first place. You can't say I didn't sleep that night, because I did. But throughout the night, I woke up several times and thought, why me? I wasn't completely broken, but I was upset. I was angry at her betrayal on several levels. On the one hand, she always expressed her undying love for me. She was the first to say it. I remember how she looked at me across the table, with eyes full of tears, after one of our petty quarrels. It was just one of those stupid misunderstandings that all couples go through. But she cried as if her dog had died or she had broken her knee. I couldn't understand it. "Why are you so upset, Danny?" I asked her. "Everything has been resolved. We are fine." "You just don't understand," she told me. "I love you. I cannot live without you." Those three little words, even though I didn't understand what she was feeling, and I couldn't really say I felt it, still rocked my world. There are guys who won't understand this. Love ruined everything. I know what you're thinking. Okay, she loves you, so what's the problem? You can get more from her. Or it's cool. You get all the advantages without having any weaknesses yourself. They imagined me as some lucky guy who could just break up with her when I got tired of it without getting hurt myself. On paper, this all sounds great, but the reality, however, is completely different. I was born with this terrible thing called a conscience. Immediately after she said those three terrible little words, she entered the active phase. I immediately felt strange. This incredible wave of sensations has passed, like just knowing that someone, another living, breathing person loves me. I became a completely different person the second she said those three words. I became responsible for her health and well-being. It was like being a gardener when you never wanted to. You leave the house to cut down unsightly weeds to pour concrete. Once you are there, you discover a rare and beautiful flower. You didn't plant him and you didn't want him, but since he's here, you feel obligated to take care of him. What you really should do to make sure your life is as you planned is to just cut the damn thing down, but you can't. So you start watering it, trimming it, and fertilizing it. Before you know it, against all your plans, you become a gardener. After that, I began to take our relationship much more seriously. After all, I had a limited number of choices. If I did anything to piss her off or damage the relationship, I would go back to being just another guy. As long as her love lasted, I was special, I was loved. Things got worse after she started expecting me to say it back to her. It was really damn hard in the beginning. My lips didn't know how to make that sound. This word is really damn hard to say, especially if you're not sure you mean it. Finally, I forced myself to say it, expecting to be struck by lightning at any second for lying. After I said this, at first I felt that I had broken the rules of some cosmic game. I said the word untruthfully, but then I saw the power that little word has. After I awkwardly said, "Love you too," her face just exploded into the biggest smile I've ever seen. She attacked me right on the street. I was sure she was going to take off her clothes and make love to me right there on the sidewalk. So, I wasn't heartbroken, but I was upset by the betrayal and lies. Not only because she used the word love untruthfully, but also because she was lying. She boosted my self-esteem so much by using that word. She tricked me into doing things for her that I would never do. And all this time she also betrayed me by having sex with other guys. Who knows what diseases I might have right now? As I thought about this possibility, my anger came to the fore. I rolled over, facing away from her. Danny got used to wrapping his arms and legs around me while we slept. I used to think it was cute. She said it was because even in her dreams, she liked us to touch each other. Now I realized that this is not cute at all. She just wanted to keep me under control, even when she was sleeping. I was contemplating my next move. On the one hand, I wanted to do my first run on board a ship. This way I could decide where I would run for the rest of the trip. On the other hand, I was thinking about sex with her. No romance, no foreplay. It would be fair for her. Throughout this entire voyage, I intended to use her only for sex, and as soon as we returned to port, I would file for an annulment. Somewhere along the trip, I will have to alert my lawyer and have paperwork ready when the ship arrives at port. I looked at her beautiful smiling face and those big fake breasts and decided to go for a run. Seeing her, I remembered the song. Everything reminds me of music, but this line from the song was especially apt. A plastic girl with a plastic heart can never love you. That's true. She made me go. She made me fall apart. So tell me, what should I do? That line was from the funniest damn rock song I've ever heard. It was a song called Ugly Girls by an unknown band from Michigan called Mark Flash. I saw one of their concerts in the park when I was in college. The group never became famous, but boy, were they energetic. They had the typical cute guy singer, like all bands. Their lead guitarist was a black guy crossed with Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. His devilish and unconventional playing probably made up 90% of their sound. He also wrote all of their original songs. Their bass player was a beautiful woman from Costa Rica. Every time I saw them play, they had a different drummer. They had every chance of making it big, but their offstage behavior was as explosive as their music. They disappeared, swallowed up by internal and external forces. I always regretted that I didn't have a recording of one of their concerts. I decided to go for a run. I got dressed in the dark so as not to wake Danny, although that was impossible. Danny could probably sleep through the roar of the herd. I left the cabin and headed to the deck. I went up to the upper deck near the top of the ship where the treadmill was located. I saw very few crew members this early in the morning. There seemed to be only a limited number of people operating the ship at this time of day. The view of the ocean and sky was inspiring. The sun was rising over the ocean. It was light enough for visibility. The soft pinkish hues of the morning light have not yet changed to a more aggressive, bright yellow-white. The rubber coating that formed a perfect oval around the deck was calling to me, but I made him wait until I started my iPod and stretched out. I've always run with the iPod Shuffle. It's the smallest and cheapest iPod, but it's perfect for runners. As I prepared to take my first tentative steps on the rubber track, I felt it before I heard it. It was a very light and rhythmic stomp. By the time I looked up, she had already run past me. I smiled, straining my eyes to see her. It made things more interesting. I enjoyed competition at every level. Now, instead of just running around aimlessly, I had a goal. I started slowly, allowing myself to get used to the surface I was running on. It felt different than running on asphalt or dirt. I was sure that the rubber covering covered the same carpet as the rest of the ship, and underneath was a metal deck. For the first few meters, I judged my pace based on her position and the distance between us. I started to run quite easily and noticed that the distance was not decreasing, so I increased the pace a little. I still wasn't running as fast as usual, but I was getting close. As I approached her, I began to make out her features and details, at least from the back. The first thing that struck me was how small she was. She was barely taller than 5 feet. She had very short, almost elven hair. Her legs were curved and perfectly proportional to the rest of her body. It was strange. Until now, I thought Danny had beautiful legs, but after seeing these, I realized that Danny's legs were just skinny. It's amazing how most of us men see a woman with long, thin legs like those of models and just go crazy. This woman's legs weren't nearly as long or thin as Danny's. In fact, they were on the line between perfection and muscle. Not an ounce of fat on those legs. Both her calves and thighs attracted my attention. And then, like the cherry on top of a perfect sundae, her ass crowned those legs. Thinking about her ass made me dizzy. Looking at her that first day made me wonder who the hell names women's clothes. She was running in what they call boy shorts. How the hell can you call them that? Those crescent moons of a perfect butt peeking out from underneath told everyone who saw them that there was no way she could be a boy. The movement of that ass as she ran was hypnotic. I completely gave up trying to overtake her and just settled into her pace, staying a few meters behind her. To this day, I'm not sure how I managed to escape without tripping over my tongue. After a few laps in time with her, I noticed that she was slowing down. To keep distance between us, I also slowed down. Finally, she suddenly stopped. She did it so quickly that I almost ran into her. I barely had time to stop my run to avoid a collision. As a result, I stopped just a few inches from her smiling face, and what a face it was. She had the biggest smile and bluest eyes I've ever seen. Everything about that face was beautiful. She was very tanned, but it was a healthy tan. It was as if she had been lightly toasted in the sun, rather than that weird orange color that tanning beds give. Her hair, although short, was incredible. They were thick and wavy. She had bangs that always fell into her eyes, but the rest were very short and combed back behind her ears. What I initially mistook for the reflections of the sun on her black hair were actually streaks of highlights. She had streaks and curls of blue intertwined with her black hair. She didn't wear makeup, not even lipstick. Everything about her was real and genuine, including that amazing smile. I was amazed, so amazed that he couldn't even make out what she was saying. I looked at her as she tried to point both index fingers to the sides of her head. I wondered what she was trying to tell me. Why didn't she just say it? Then suddenly it dawned on me that she was trying to tell me to take out my headphones so I could hear her. "Hi," she said. She definitely had a southern accent to her speech. She had that way that southerners draw out every word, so that even monosyllabic words take 3 days to hear. Southern accents have always attracted me. I think of all the American regional accents, this is the sexiest. In her case, it fell on a voice that sounded like honey dripping from a magnolia tree. Okay, I know magnolias don't produce honey, but damn, that's what it sounded like. Have you ever listened to someone talk and thought you immediately knew what they were doing? I have several friends like this. My friend Dave speaks so quickly and effectively that you can tell just by listening to him that he is an engineer. Carl spices up every sentence he makes and describes everything in terms of its value, so you know he's a banker. Just from the tone of this woman's voice, I was sure that she must be a phone sex operator. "Do you happen to know how far we've already run?" she asked. I just stood there, taking her in with my gaze. She looked amused as I looked her up and down, taking in her every feature and size. It took me a while to realize that I was being rude. Sorry," I said. "What did you say?" She laughed, and it wasn't one of those fake girl laughs. It was the ringing and full laughter of a man who hides nothing and does not pretend. This spoke volumes about her personality and character. "I asked if you knew how far we ran," she said. As she spoke, she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "How many meters are there in one circle?" she asked. "We ran 3.5 laps. "I have no idea," I laughed. So we immediately found common ground in our mutual ignorance of how long we needed to run or for how long. "Well then," she said, "we seem to be running at the same pace. Let's just run until we want to go to breakfast." "This is the best offer I've had in a long time," I said. We started running, and it was strange. There are so many things I never hear when I run. I can't hear myself breathing. I can't hear people next to me. I can't even hear my own steps because I never run without music. This first run together was a joyful event. I enjoyed all the sounds I had never heard before. But the most incredible of all these sounds was the sound of her voice. We had a few moments during that first run that were pure magic. Our names became a source of entertainment. When she told me her name was Ska, I was puzzled. I wondered who would call such a beautiful woman such a strange name. "What the hell is Ska?" "Ska," I repeated uncertainly. That's unusual." "Not Ska," she laughed. "Ska." I just looked at her like she was the most beautiful girl in a crazy beauty pageant. "Ease, K, ah," she said. "Ska." Suddenly, an epiphany occurred in my brain. "Ah, sky," I said, laughing. "It must be a southern thing." "What's your name, funny man?" she asked. "Caleb, but everyone calls me Cal," I said. "Caleb," she chuckled. The way she said it, stretching the word out so much, it sounded completely different. It's such a southern epiphany name. Wasn't there a character in the movie Delivering named Caleb? And let me guess, Judging by your voice, you're from California, and you call yourself Cal. She even stretched Cal to double its length when she said this. I have no idea how far we ran that morning or how long it took. I just know that I've never had a better time. I completely forgot about all my problems and everything that was happening in my life. We went for breakfast and got there just as the first and freshest food was being brought out. We sat at a small table and just chatted about whatever we wanted. Oh, she suddenly said, you almost made me late for my class. Will we see you at the track tomorrow? Count on it, Ska, I laughed. Okay, call, she said. As she turned to leave, she ran her hand down the side of my face, barely touching my ear. That was incredible. I've never experienced anything like this before. It was as if an electric discharge passed between us, and the gesture itself, although it seemed random, was the most intimate touch I had ever experienced. I felt more intimacy from her touching the side of my face than from all of Danny's gestures during sex. I sat for a long time after she left, holding my cheek where she touched me. I understood how the schoolgirls on TV feel after being kissed by the man of their dreams. I will never wash my face again, I thought. I returned to our cabin to find Danny putting on her makeup. Her hair was in curlers, and she opened her huge makeup case, using product after product. It amazed me how much she had to do to make her face look normal. Everything she used was designed to look like she wasn't wearing makeup. I shook my head, thinking how stupid this was. It usually took her an hour to get ready for even the most informal date. Hey, Cal, she said, applying some cream under her eyes. Hi, I said. I'm glad you're feeling better, she said. Give me 20 minutes and I'll be ready to go to breakfast. Cal, I need to go shopping. It's an emergency. Danny, I already had breakfast, I said. What emergency situation can be solved by shopping? We've been invited to sit at the captain's table for dinner this evening, she said delightedly. It's a semi-formal event. You have to wear a suit. You have a lot of suits, but I need to find just the right dress. Now that I'm your wife, I have to create the right look. Everything I do or wear reflects on you, you know. I didn't know if she really thought that way or if she just wanted an excuse to spend more of my money on clothes. If this had been last night, I would have categorically said no. I'd already decided to spend the rest of the trip having sex with her and then dump her cheater as soon as we docked. I intended to leave her at the dock without any trip home. But this morning, apparently, my priorities have changed. Meeting Ska showed me that there are still good people in the world. I just had to go out and find one. Okay, honey, whatever you say, I told her. You can go and check out the gym, she said. But remember, don't get too tired. We still have things to do. I was going to do some things myself. There was a knock on our door, and Emma came in. Are you decent? She asked. I'm decent, I chuckled. Have a good time, Emma. Danny, make sure you buy something nice for Emma too. I didn't mind spending money on Emma. I actually felt better spending money on her than on Danny. At least Emma tried to stand up for me. I took a long, hot shower and dressed in jeans and a casual shirt. I grabbed my iPad from the table and logged into my email. I sent a letter to John Forsyth, my lawyer. He was the one who drew up my prenuptial agreement with Danny. I briefly outlined the situation and asked him to begin the annulment process. If the situation was not suitable for an annulment, I asked him to begin the divorce process immediately. I told him it was best to email me the details since there was no cell service on the ship. I also told him that at the first port of call, or whenever I could, I would look for a satellite phone. I spent the afternoon organizing everything. I emailed my assistant and told her about the situation. I hired her to change the locks on my apartment. Even though it wasn't necessary, I intended to give Danny a few dollars so she would just go away. Before we got married, Danny shared an apartment with Emma. If Emma didn't already have a new roommate, she could go back there for all I care. It was actually a good thing that she hadn't had time to move all her things yet. This would give her less stuff to move back. I checked my bank account. So far, Danny only had one of my bank cards and one credit card. She could access my checking account, but not my savings account, since most of my money was in savings or investments or other bank accounts. I was relatively safe. I went to the gym and had a good workout. The gym had a good selection of machines, and I had no trouble finding everything I needed for my routine workout. After training, I had lunch at a small cafe on one of the upper decks. I looked at the sea and all the happy people on the ship and felt better about myself. As I sat there, I noticed several women looking at me. I would have no problem returning to social life after this, but I intended to do it in a very dignified manner. I had no intention of spending the cruise looking for someone to replace Danny or doing anything to bring attention to my situation. A little later after lunch, I received a text message from Danny. Her message said she loved me. This meant that she spent a lot of my money. She wanted me to return to the cabin no later than 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dinner was at 6 sharp, and she wanted us to make love before getting dressed. I spent the afternoon wandering around the ship. It really was a fascinating ship. There was so much to see and do that it would take weeks to try everything. Around 3:30, I received a text message from Danny. She was furious and wanted me to return to the cabin immediately. I walked towards our cabin slowly. "Where have you been?" Danny pouted as soon as I entered. "Sorry, Danny," I said. "I lost track of time and got lost. It's a really big ship." "It's after 5, she said. "I need to start getting ready for dinner. Emma will be sitting at the table with one of the other important crew members. She will be in the room, but she won't be sitting with us." "Emma is a really beautiful girl," I said. "She'll be fine, trust me." "You sound like you'd be better off with her," Danny said sharply. "Daniel, you don't have to act stupid," I said. "I barely know Emma. You're the woman I married." An hour later, we were taken to the main restaurant and introduced to the captain and the people sitting at his table. Danny wore a beautiful light yellow dress that left little to the imagination. Every man in the room turned to look at her as we entered. The dress was cut so low in the front that almost all of her breasts were visible. She accessorized the dress with some gold jewelry, and even her shoes were in a matching gold shade. Most of the men at our table couldn't take their eyes off her, and she knew it. The other couples at our table ranged from newlyweds who were even younger than Danny and I to older spouses who had been married longer than I had been alive. Most of the people at the table were very friendly, and the conversation was fun. During dinner, I noticed that a man at one of the other tables spent most of his time looking at Danny. He was sitting with 2 other men, and he was wearing a suit that cost at least a couple $1,000s. I knew this because I had the same suit at home and wore it to close my biggest deals. In the back of my mind, I wondered what he would be working on tonight. After we ate, the dancing began. I got up and danced with Danny. She was extremely happy about the ship, the cruise, our honeymoon, and the dinner in general, but she was still a little upset with me. As we returned to our table, I noticed one of the older ladies was tapping her foot to the beat of the music. Her husband walked with a cane and had a very noticeable limp. I approached him and very politely asked him if he would give me the honor of dancing with his wife. They both smiled, and he nodded. I danced with a woman named Sally McBride. This name was familiar to me, but I could not remember where. As I sat down, I noticed that Danny had disappeared. I looked around and saw her heading to the dance floor with that asshole in a suit. He held her and pulled her much closer to him than was appropriate, and she let him. It might have been her way of getting back at me for being late, but it was truly humiliating. I watched them for a few moments and then got up to get her before things got worse. I noticed that the asshole put his hand down and grabbed a big piece of Danny's ass, and she didn't do anything to stop him. The asshole looked over her shoulder and grinned at me. His look told me that he knew what he was doing. It was one of those smart smiles you give to a guy whose wife you're about to seduce. Before I approached them, his 2 friends stepped between us. "Fuck off, buddy," one of them said. He put his hand on my chest as if trying to hold me back. That was enough. "Take your hand off me," I said politely. His friend stood next to him. I grabbed the arm on my chest and turned it so that my elbow was pointing down, and then with a sharp movement of my other arm, I lifted it up, breaking my arm at the elbow. The crunch could be heard throughout the room. The man's high-pitched screams sound even louder. I raised my knee sharply and stomped hard on his friend's leg, and when he reflexively tried to reach his leg, I raised my knee to meet his dropping jaw. It turned off faster than a light switch. The asshole in the suit turned to look at me, shock and horror written all over his face. He knew I was coming after him and began to retreat. Danny stood next to him, her eyes as big as saucers. Fortunately for both, before I could reach him, 3 of the ship's guards threw me to the floor and took me to the punishment cell. You can learn a lot about people by observing their reactions when you are in trouble. As the guards lifted me up so I could walk and tried to restrain my arms, Emma came over and tried to explain that I was not a very aggressive person and something must have happened to cause this reaction in me. Danny just stood there and then left the room with the asshole while Emma tried to talk them into letting me go. The people at my table also tried to protect me, but it was all in vain. 10 minutes later, I found myself in the bowels of the ship in a room with a locked door. It was a very small room with only a table, a chair, and a bed. About half an hour after I was placed there, the guard assigned to keep an eye on me entered the room. "You have a visitor," he said. He watched me carefully, as if he expected me to try something at any moment. I was ready to scold Danielle. When the man entered the room, I was shocked. It wasn't her. It was Emma. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. I tried to tell them it was all some kind of misunderstanding, but they didn't really listen. "You hit those 2 men hard," she said. "I saw how Danny acted. I don't know why she does things like that sometimes." "Don't worry about it," I said. "As soon as I find her, I'll tell her where you are so she can come and see you," she told me. "Emma, don't," I said. "I don't want to see her." "You don't mean it," she said. "You're just angry right now." I just looked at her. I liked Emma, but I didn't think. Telling her that I know more about Danny than she thought would be a good idea. "Do you want me to bring you something?" she asked. "I wish I had my own iPad," I said. "And if you could bring his charger, that would be great. The iPad is on the table next to our bed, and the charger is in the socket." I sat on the bed, thinking about how I ended up in this situation. In the end, I didn't care about Danny. Yesterday, it killed our marriage. I've already started asking a lawyer to sort out the annulment. I think it was pride. Allowing some gorilla to grope your wife in front of you and in public requires a reaction, even if you cannot stand this cheater. After a while, Emma returned with my iPad. The guy who was guarding me let her in again. "I'm actually not sure if I'm allowed to give you this," he said. "So if this comes up, I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention it." I nodded and noticed that he seemed to be looking at Emma a lot. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" he asked. "I have studied many different styles of martial arts since I was young," I told him. He nodded and returned to the room outside. I lay down on the small, uncomfortable bed and tried to sleep. I thought that when Danny decided she wanted to come to me, they might wake me up. But she never came that night. I woke up in the middle of the night. According to my watch, it was 4 in the morning. Normally, I would get up to run after about 2 hours. When I thought about running, I thought of Sky. I knocked on the door of the room I was in and heard a bored voice. "It's open," he said. I opened the door and saw another one of the ship's guards. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Through that door," he said. I looked at him in confusion. "The bathroom is through that door," he said. Thanks, but that's not it," I told him. "I need to convey a message to someone." "Listen, buddy, I've been there," he said. "I also reviewed the CCTV footage. Those guys were trying to stop you from approaching your wife, to stop her from creating this whole damn spectacle. Most of my colleagues are on your side. We only stopped you because, firstly, it's our job, and secondly, we didn't want you to kill that asshole. I'm sorry to say, but he spent most of the night at some dance clubs with your wife. They both got drunk as hell. So can you deliver the message for me? I asked. He nodded, and I quickly wrote a short note to Sky, telling her that I really didn't want to miss our run, but there was no way I could count on it. The security guard promised me that he would deliver it. All I had to do was tell him which cabin she was in. I explained to him that I didn't know, but if he brought her to the treadmill at 6 in the morning, he would find her. Then I went back to bed. I woke up a couple of hours later when someone knocked on my door. The first guard returned. He looked inside and told me that I had a visitor. "This is—" I started. "This is not the woman from last night," he said. "Tell her I don't want to see her," I said. He nodded and went outside. A few minutes later, he returned. "She says she doesn't care," he said. Before he could say anything else, Sky slipped between him and the door. "Why don't you want to see me?" she asked. "I didn't do anything to you." "Sorry, Sky," I said. "I thought you were someone else." I shrugged, and the guard left. "So who did you think I was?" she asked. "It seems pretty weird that you don't want to see anyone when you're stuck here." I just looked at her and shrugged. "Oh, her," she said. "I guess I can understand that." "Isn't it?" I joked. Seeing her greatly improved my mood. "Do you really have to be on deck and run?" "I decided to take the day off," she smiled. "I have a friend who needs me." "Really?" I said. "Who?" "You stupid," she winked. "So what are we going to do with our morning hours before breakfast? You know the whole ship is talking about your situation. Even the crew is discussing it. More than half of everyone thinks that you got it unfairly. The others are afraid of you." "Why should anyone be afraid of me?" I asked. "Well, duh, you sent two big guys to the hospital faster than a cat can lick itself. It was so fast that the guards, who are trained to recognize and respond to such situations, didn't even realize what was happening. The guy whose arm you broke at the elbow had to be sent to an orthoptist. The doctor on board the ship was unable to cope with the severity of the fracture. He may never regain full function of his arm. The other guy didn't finish well either. He had to drag his jaw to let it heal. You also broke 3 bones in the top of his foot." She simply shook her head and smiled. "And everyone on the ship is completely outraged by your wife. She was out clubbing with that asshole most of the night. Most passengers want nothing to do with them. I'm one of them, so when she comes to see you, I'll leave and come back later." "You don't have to leave," I said. "I won't see her." "Oh, you're just mad at her now," Sky said. "Come on, you're newlyweds. There are always some problems that happen during the honeymoon. This is truly the time when two people have to get used to the idea of being together forever. Getting used to living together instead of just dating takes time." "Sky, my marriage was over before that happened," I said. "In recent days, I have been analyzing our relationship and probably noticed that something was missing in it. I've always heard how great it is to be in love and all that, but the problem is that I've never felt anything like that. Sure, Danielle is beautiful in an obvious way that appeals to most men, but I just don't feel a strong emotional connection to her. You're probably asking yourself why I married her, aren't you?" Sky crossed her arms and nodded, but didn't say anything. "To tell you the truth, it was a mistake. It was a bad turn of events. It was fate or luck or whatever. We dated for a long time, more than a year. All my friends, at least male ones, told me that I should not let her go. She always told me that she loved me, so I guess I started telling her that because it seemed like the right thing to do." Sky's mouth dropped open in surprise. "Okay, stop. Don't say anything. Let me finish," I said. "Sky, I didn't know how I should feel. I've never been in love, so how the hell could I know what it feels like? I actually believed that it might come later, or that maybe I was just incapable of it. Either way, I intended to spend the rest of our lives together taking care of her." Hell, I even went on that damn cruise for our honeymoon because that's what she wanted. I spent the last year doing a lot of things I didn't like because she wanted me to. Why didn't you want to go on a cruise? Sky asked. Because I hate boats, I said. I'm deathly afraid of drowning when this thing goes down. I'm also afraid of heights, so being on such a big ship for me. Double punishment, she finished for me. And you did this for a woman you don't really love? I nodded. So how do you know you don't love her now? She asked. You may love her, but since you don't know what love is, you don't recognize it for what it really is. No, I said. I am 100% sure that not only do I not love her, but I never have. How can you? Sky began. This woman really liked to go through everything to the end. Let's leave this conversation for later, I said. Besides, it doesn't matter whether I loved her or not. She never loved me. She was simply using me to improve her lifestyle. I overheard her talking to her best friend yesterday before all this. Hearing the woman you married tell her friend that she only married you so she wouldn't have to work was terrifying. She also told her that she needed to get pregnant as soon as possible. Why does she need a child if she doesn't love you? Sky asked. We have a prenuptial agreement, I said. My lawyer insisted on this. If we divorce in less than a reasonable period of time, she will get nothing. On the other hand, if she gets pregnant, I will be legally obligated to support my child, which will give Danielle a financial connection to me. She's a really mean bitch, Sky said. I still don't understand why she hasn't come to see you yet. This is how Danielle reacts to every fight we've ever had, I said. She gets angry and then runs away, and we don't see each other for days. If she thinks she's right, then she expects me to make the first move and call her. If she knows she's wrong, then she'll come back crying and sniffling, begging me to forgive her. It usually doesn't matter who's wrong. The make-up sex is phenomenal. Too much information, Sky said. So what will you do when she shows up? It doesn't matter, I said. I'm done with her. I've already got my lawyer to start the annulment process. If the annulment fails, he will begin the divorce process. How can you get an annulment if you've already had sex? Sky asked. Easy revocation rules have been updated in our state to reflect modern relationships. Since most couples have already had sex long before marriage, annulments are allowed for a variety of reasons. One of them is if the marriage is dissolved within a certain, very short time period. In my case, I had my lawyer start the process less than 24 hours after the ceremony. Another reason is if the marriage is concluded under false pretenses. Now I know that Danielle only married me for my money. I am very confident that I will get an annulment. Okay, I hate asking you question after question, Sky said. But if you don't love her and are going to kick her out the door, why are you so upset that she let that asshole touch her? Sky, it was humiliating. It was a matter of pride. I didn't care if she met him later and slept with him, as long as it was discreet. But just letting some guy touch himself in public while I was around was beyond insulting. You need to know Danielle to understand her motives. She did it for one reason. She was mad at me because I didn't come back to our cabin to have sex with her before dinner at the captain's table. It was her way of showing me that if I wasn't careful, she could easily find someone else. She's really quirky, isn't she? Sky asked. I just smiled and nodded. Okay, stop talking about your wife, she said. What do you usually do here for fun? Sky, I'm in jail, I said. No, darling, she said. We're in jail. From the first moment I met Sky, I knew something was wrong with her. I always felt strange around her. It was like she just belonged in my life. When she said, "We're in jail," and called me honey, I didn't know what to feel. I just wanted to smile. But it wasn't the kind of smile where you move your mouth to show happiness. It was that smile that comes from within and just explodes through your mouth because you really are so happy. So what games do you like? I asked. What do you have? She answered. We started playing Monopoly on my iPad. Believe me, this was not my idea. I didn't want to use it. After all, I am a professional financial advisor. Or at least that's what I thought until she beat me. She was still laughing about it a couple of hours later when the security guard came in and told me I had another visitor. Sky and I looked at each other. "It's not her," the guard said. "I remember that you don't want to see her. It's not like she was trying to see you anyway. This is the lady from last night, very beautiful, who came to you first." "He's talking about Emma," I told Sky. "This is Danielle's best friend. I overheard Danny telling her everything. She is a good person." "Do you think she's here on behalf of your wife?" Sky asked. "I'll go and get us breakfast while you talk to her." I nodded, and the guard let Emma into the room. She and Sky looked at each other curiously at the crossroads. "Who's your friend?" Emma asked. "I met her yesterday while I was running," I said. "Have you had breakfast yet?" Emma asked. "I could go and get you something. I'm not sure if they'll let you, but I can find out." "Sky will bring us breakfast," I said. "She's already coming for him." "Cal, I spoke to the captain," Emma said. "He's really confused. Most people on the ship think you got it unfairly, but there is a small group of people who want you to stay locked up. The captain also has the problem that there have been thefts and other crimes on board the ship. I think they're trying to tie you to all this." "Don't worry, Emma," I smiled. "I'm fine." "What did Danny say when you talked to her?" she asked. "Emma, I haven't spoken to Danny since DSNR last night," I said. Emma looked worried. "What's wrong, Emma?" I asked. "Well, nothing," she said. "Emma, you can also tell me. As far as I can tell, nothing you say will shock me." "No, it's really nothing," Emma said. "I just thought she was here with you. I'll go and find her now." "Emma, don't worry about it for me. I'm so mad at her right now that her absence is probably for the best," I said. "But Cal, you know how she gets when she's angry. This entire honeymoon was one problem after another, and she blames herself. At first you couldn't. You know, on your wedding night, she blames herself because she didn't really know you were going to get sick. And yesterday, Cal, you should have seen her. She dressed up like that in her best lingerie and waited for you all day. So she was already angry when you went to dinner. She thinks that you are already tired of her. So, I really think she was just trying to get you interested again, and it just got out of hand." I looked at her with regret. "Would you do that, Emma?" I asked. "No," she said. "I would drag you into our cabin and deal with you, and then deal with you." "Most reasonable women would do that," I said. "But Cal, you know that Danny is not like most sensible women. Well, I'm her best friend and I love her. But even I have to admit that she's a little spoiled. But you are partly to blame for this too. Cal, you buy her everything she asks for and do everything she wants. So if she's become a little spoiled, you're at least partly to blame. You are the best thing that happened to her." "Maybe she felt threatened. She doesn't want to lose you," Emma said. "There's something else you don't know about. Danny told me something before we went on the cruise. While we were putting on our dresses before the wedding, she told me not to expect to see you often. She came to this ship for one purpose. You had to have sex a lot because she wanted to get pregnant before you returned. She said you were talking about children, and she wanted to give you a child before you were married for a year. She planned it all. She wants 3 children, and she thinks you should have them early in your marriage. That way, when your career really takes off, you can retire early and you can both travel and enjoy each other while you're still relatively young." I wondered if Emma believed all this, especially after hearing Danny talk yesterday. I looked into her eyes and realized that Emma was talking about her dream, not about Danny. Danny was just telling Emma what she wanted to hear so that her friend wouldn't think Danny was just using me. "Okay, Emma," I said quietly. "I guess I just need a few days to get over it. I'm really mad at Danielle right now, so nothing good will come out of our meeting." "Everyone talks about her like she's some kind of slut," Emma said. "I really think it would be better for both of you to make up quickly. This really isn't the kind of thing that's going to make her feel better." I'm just too mad at her to even talk to her right now, I said. But Cal, you're better than that. It's just anger. You are hurt because of what she did. Believe me, I know what it's like to be wounded. I know how you feel right now. Remember why I'm on this cruise with you too. But in the end, your situation is better than mine. At least you have a chance to still be with her. I'll take that into account, I said. Emma, rest yourself. If you need money or anything else, let me know. Someone should have a good time here, and you really like that guard outside. Emma's eyes widened. Before she could say anything, Sky knocked on the door and then wheeled a cart into the room. I'll come back and talk to you later, Emma smiled. I noticed she looked at Sky again and shook her head. Okay, I heard the end of it, Sky said as she laid out our breakfast. Tim, she called loudly. He looked in the door. We need another chair. She continued arranging everything on the table. Tim returned a few moments later with another folding chair. She smiled at him as he set it down. She then stood back and examined everything she had prepared. Okay, let's eat, she said. As I started to eat my toast, Sky started talking. Emma is really very concerned about you and your wife, she said. It shows that even a horse like your wife has people who believe in her. I wish you would stop saying that, I said. Okay, sorry for calling her a horse, she said. In the old days, the worst thing you could imagine a man doing was stealing your horse. It's not that she's a horse, I said. You keep calling her my wife. Oh, someone's pain is starting to show a little, Sky said. I know what you feel. Believe me, I was in the same situation. God, I wish everyone would stop saying that, I said. Darling, love is a universal concept, she said. Almost all of us can sympathize with you because we've all had someone we loved and it didn't work out. I know right now you think you're the only one going through this, but trust me, you're not. Cal, why do you think I'm here? She asked. Maybe you're on vacation, I said. Cal, this is not a singles cruise. In case you haven't noticed, there are very few single people here. This is a cruise for couples, for honeymoons and cozy time. I thought about it for a second and realized she was right. I only knew a few people who were here alone. Emma was one of them. Asshole and his friends were also singles, and there were a few couples where one spouse died before the cruise and made the trip alone to either avoid losing money or spend time trying to cope with the loss of their partner in a new environment. This was supposed to be my honeymoon too, she said. My parents threw a party for my 20th birthday. That was 4 years ago, if you keep track of time. One of the guests at the party was Marcus Clark. From the moment he entered my house, I have not seen anyone else. Over the next 4 years we dated. This man became my life. Everything we did was because he wanted it. Every penny I made from work went to us. I often thought about moving to a big city to start my life, but Marcus wanted to stay there. He had all his friends, and he kept teasing me with little things like, after we get married, we need to be in a place where we can raise our kids right. Every time that creep said something like that, I melted and felt so happy. Unfortunately, I didn't find out what a scoundrel he was until the day before our wedding. His interests in life boiled down to 3 things: sex, beer, and his Dodge Charger. I was probably in 4th place. I think I only got that far because I supplied him with all the beer he drank, most of the sex he got, and paid off the loan on his Charger. At that moment, I thought that I was the only one giving it to him. I came home early from work to pick up my dress for our wedding. I wanted to see how it would look in a church. I was wondering how the little glass beads that were sewn all over the dress would reflect the light when they took photos. I didn't want my wedding photos to be ruined by the glare from my dress. She looked at me as if this was supposed to matter to me. I really don't understand how women think about these things, so I just nodded for her to continue her story. Anyway, I heard it before I even got to our bedroom. He was panting and breathing heavily, as if he were a little engine trying to climb a hill. Then I heard him speak between breaths. He said, "Damn, Susie, oh, the best girl in town." And then I heard my cousin Sue ask him, "Then why are you marrying Sky?" He told her that he was in a difficult position because he met me first. She was better than me in every way he could think of. In real terms, this is not true, but from the point of view of how guys think, she is probably really better for him. She has long hair and large breasts. Plus, she's not very picky when it comes to sex. So I left home, angry as hell. The next day, the day we were supposed to get married, I went and found his car. This car was his pride and joy. A bright orange 2009 Dodge Charger painted like the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard. I broke every window in that car. I broke every window, every light and every turn signal, both inside and out. I cut his tires and took his chrome rims with a hammer. I dumped a 5-pound bag of sugar into his gas tank and then used a screwdriver to paint him. I left him a note saying that since I was paying for his car, I should take it. But it was in his name, so Sue could continue to pay off the loan for him. Of course, she had to find a job first. While he was sitting there in the church with our friends and family, waiting for me, I left town. I didn't really know where to go. I paid for this cruise, so I just exchanged his ticket, paying a large penalty for last-minute cancellation, but it was worth it. I used this money to extend the duration of my journey, and here I am. I was amazed to hear what she went through. "I have no idea what I'll do when this cruise is over," she smiled. "But I wanted you to know that I truly understand what you're going through." During the rest of breakfast, neither of us wanted to talk about anything too serious. We learned a lot about each other and discovered that we have a lot in common. We both loved different types of music. We both liked old hits from the 80s. We spent a lot of time this morning playing a game we made up. It was something like a game of search for truth, but in a different way. We took turns naming famous and little-known bands from the 80s and 90s. When one of us named the band, the other person had to name one of their songs. If she named a band and I couldn't name one of their songs, she got a point. If I could name one of their songs, I got a point. If there was any doubt about the existence of a band or a song, we would use my iPad and look it up online. By early afternoon, I was starting to catch up on the time she had beaten me at Monopoly. We had several challenges. One was when I named the group Lion. Sky confused them with White Lion and quickly named Wait as one of their songs. When I told her this was the wrong group, she challenged me. We Googled them to prove their existence. We even saw a video for their song, Power Love. After that, we were too busy laughing to continue playing. We were also hungry. I felt my phone vibrate before we started talking about lunch. It was a message from my bank. It informed me that one of my accounts was empty. I could top it up by transferring money from my savings account. I also had another checking account from which I could transfer money. The first checking account was what I called a house account. This was the one Danielle had access to. I just smiled. If she runs out of money, it's not my problem anymore. I wondered how she was able to spend $5,000 in just a couple of days, but it was the last money she would ever get from me, and by divorce standards, it was pretty cheap. A few minutes later, Emma reappeared. "Do you need something for lunch?" she asked. She seemed really surprised to see Sky was still here. "We're fine, but thanks for asking," Sky said before I could do anything. Then she curled her lips into a smile. "I have an idea," she said. "Tim," she shouted. A few minutes later, Tim hurriedly entered the room. We couldn't tell if he came so quickly because Sky called him or because Emma was there. They both looked at each other and then looked away. That was cute. "We're hungry," Sky said, breaking up the teenage flirtation. "What can I bring you?" Tim asked. "I was thinking maybe you could go to lunch with Emma, and you two could bring us something," Sky said. Tim clearly liked the idea. Emma didn't seem to mind either. So after a brief discussion about where they should eat, they left. They didn't even have time to close the door. A few seconds later, Tim reappeared in the doorway. Cal, I asked earlier and the captain said you were allowed to go to the bathroom or take care of your daily needs. We're on a ship, so you have nowhere to escape. So why don't you two just go out to lunch? Stay away from the upper decks near the bridge, and I think you won't have any problems. If anyone asks, just say you went to take a shower. Then he and Emma left. Sky held out her hand to me, and we went looking for something to eat for lunch. We met Tim and Emma, and I asked her to stop by my cabin and bring me a few changes of clothes. Emma agreed to do it, but she believed that I would have to meet Danielle sooner or later. Avoiding it won't help. She also looked at Sky very curiously. It was clear that she was having a hard time understanding how Sky fit into this whole situation. I could understand this easily. As humans, our brains work even when we don't want them to, trying to fit everything into place. Even when we sleep, they are constantly sorting through the information we give them, always trying to find the right place and classification for everything and everyone. Now Emma's brain was trying to determine who Sky was and whether she was a friend or an enemy. We enjoyed lunch in a small bistro overlooking the ship's aft deck. There was plenty to see, including a zip line and climbing wall. But the funny thing was that we were so absorbed in each other that we somehow lost sight of them. After lunch, we walked slowly back to security. There was no one there. Tim was still at lunch with Emma, and the night guard hasn't come yet. On a ship this size, the rest of the security team was busy monitoring the rest of the ship. I had a great day, Sky said, but you need to go out and see the ship for yourself, I said. I completely understand. I appreciate the time you have spent with me so far. You've done more for me than the person I'm married to. Thank you. You're just going to paint yourself further and further into a corner, aren't you? She asked, smiling. Can I finish my thoughts, or do you enjoy finishing my thoughts for me? I smiled and pretended to zip my lips shut. I wanted to say that I had a wonderful day and was looking forward to spending the evening with you, but I wanted to go back to my cabin and change out of my running shorts and top, she said. You know, your night guard seems nice too. Maybe he'll let us go out for dinner and a walk on the deck. I don't think we'll be sitting at the captain's table, but there are so many places to eat here. I just looked at her, smiling. She smiled back. Well, are you going to say something? She asked. In the last 10 hours or so since she showed up this morning, I've spent more time smiling than I ever remember in my entire life. Oh, can I talk now? I asked. Yes, come into the conversation whenever you want, she said. Before I could come up with my witty retort, the night guard entered the room. You know the doors are all open, he said. Yes, Sky and I answered at the same time. Oh, okay, he said. Probably there's really nowhere to go. Sky looked at me, and I felt like she was expecting something. After a couple of minutes of rather strange silence, she turned and left, promising to return quickly. The guard stood looking at me, too. She's a sweetheart, he said. I saw you two having lunch together a little earlier. I escaped while the other guard wasn't looking, I said. You mean while he was having lunch with that woman who came to see you yesterday? He asked. Good excuse. If you decide to go out later and someone else catches you, tell them the same about me. I looked at him in bewilderment. He returned to the outer room to watch TV. I realized that I had been so busy with Sky for most of the day that I hadn't even checked my email. I logged into my email account and found a couple of messages from my lawyer. He was confident that I could get an annulment. He will have the documents ready to hand over to Danielle as soon as we arrive at the port. My assistant dealt with the issues that I entrusted to her. The locks in my apartment have been changed, and all of Danielle's things that were moved to my apartment were placed in storage. We paid for a month of storage in the warehouse for her, after which her things will be sold. I was in the middle of writing another message when the guard returned. You have a visitor, he said. I could tell by his face that I wasn't going to like it. That's her, he said. Tell her I don't want to see her and send her away, I told him. He nodded and went into the outer room. I heard a lot of screaming and yelling and a couple of blows. "Damn it, Cal! This won't solve the problems between us," she shouted from the other room. "You messed up. I'm angry. I messed up too, but we have a problem." He reappeared in the doorway and looked at me. I shook my head. He smiled, and the next thing I heard was more screams from Danielle. "I'll go to the captain," she blurted out. "This is an emergency situation. I have the right to talk to my husband." A few minutes later, he reappeared. "What a woman," he said. "So what really happened between you two? When you came here, you were a typical newlywed couple in love." "Yes, I would be interested to know that too," said the captain, appearing behind him. "We have more than one problem right now, and I think they all have to do with you." I gave them a brief overview of my relationship with Danielle. I quickly related the conversation I overheard between her and Emma. I then explained what happened at the dinner and what triggered my reaction. The captain nodded. "We have reviewed security footage and spoken to many of the passengers with whom you were in contact," he said. "Many of them think that I should let you go, but a small but vocal group believes you should remain a prisoner." "Captain, are there any free cabins on the ship?" I asked. "No, but you and your wife are already booked into one of the best cabins we have," he said. "Then we really don't have a problem," I said. "I have no problem staying here. There's no way I want to share a cabin with Danielle. I would be grateful if someone could get my things from that cabin." "I'll have someone bring them here while your wife is somewhere else," he said. "She wants to meet me. I'm going to go up to my office now. I'll keep her there as long as possible. But I also need to ask you a favor." "What can I do?" I asked. "You could ask your friends to stop," he said. "It looks like your lawyer turned to several of his friends for help. They in turn turned to someone else for help. And I had to have a long conversation about you with the director of the entire cruise line. It seems like some very important people are supporting you, so I was told to handle you very carefully." "I'll see what I can do," I said. About 10 minutes after the captain left, the guard returned to the room. "Damn, I'm starting to feel like I'm more your secretary than a security guard," he said. "You know the captain said you were free to leave," he said. "Well, that's not entirely true," I told him. "I have to keep my profile low so as not to irritate the few who think I'm a serial killer." "You have another visitor," he said. "I think I'd better stay in the room this time." "I already told you I don't want to see her," I said. "It's not her," he grinned. "I need you to remain calm. It's that asshole." "Why the hell does he want to see me?" I asked. "The easiest way to find out is to ask him," he said. I nodded, and he called the man inside. As soon as I saw the smug asshole standing there, I wanted to kill him. "We need privacy for our conversation," he told the guard. "No, it's not necessary," I answered sharply. "He is here for your protection, just in case I decide to finish what your friends stopped me from doing last night." He swallowed and turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, "and I have no friends on board the ship. Are you talking about these two men you fought with last night? If you're talking about them, then I don't know them. I have come to discuss a business proposal of a very personal nature. Your wife has racked up debts with me that we should talk about." "I'm not interested in my wife's debts," I said. "When she tried to contact me earlier today, I ignored it. When she tried to visit me this afternoon, I refused to see her. Whatever happens between you two is none of my business." I took out my iPhone and pretended to show him the text. While I was doing this, I took a photo of him. "I suggest you talk to your wife," he said. "I'll be back at this time tomorrow. It will be better for all of us if we resolve this matter before it escalates." Then he turned and left the room. I sent a photo of him to my lawyer. I told him that this was the guy Danielle had been hanging out with in clubs. I thought this guy might be useful if I needed a divorce instead of an annulment. After some time, 2 crew members came with my suitcases and other things. I packed as efficiently as possible in the small security room. I chose an outfit for the evening and went to another room to change. The bathroom I used was not adequate. There was no bath or shower. I asked the security guard to show me one of the locker rooms that the crew used. I took a nice hot shower and changed clothes. When I returned to the security room, Emma was already there. "Cal, wow, you look great," she said. "Thank you, Emma. Did you enjoy lunch?" She instantly blushed. "Oh, Emma," I laughed. "You need to slow down, girl. You know, sailors have a reputation. Make him wait a while before you give yourself to him." She blushed even more. "Cal, we are not here to discuss my personal life," she said. "Daniel is sitting in your cabin crying. Nothing works out the way she planned, and she has a really big problem. Perhaps only you can help her with this." "Then she's in trouble," I said. Emma looked around the room and noticed all my suitcases. "Cal, I only brought you clothes and underwear. Where do all these things come from?" she asked. "Forget it. Don't you just want to go and talk to her?" "Why do I need it?" I asked. She humiliated me in front of the entire ship, acting like a slut, less than 48 hours after our wedding. I spent the night in jail while she spent my money. Dancing and drinking with the asshole she let touch her. Besides, Emma, I know. "Do you know that?" Emma asked. My brain kicked in, and I realized it was best for me not to let Emma or Danielle know that I had heard their conversation. Danielle wasn't completely stupid. If she knew I was seeking an annulment or divorce, she would try to stop it. I'd rather they just hand her the paperwork as soon as she sets foot on land. "I know Danielle didn't come back to our cabin all night," I said. "It's not her fault," Emma said. "You really need to go and talk to her." "No, I really don't need to," I said. "If this kind of childish behavior is what I can expect from her, then I'm better off without her." Sky appeared just at that moment. "Where are our guards?" she smiled. "Oh, they're around here somewhere," I said. "We should probably fire them. They let just anyone in here." Sky was wearing a white blouse with a lace front. She was wearing a very tight black leather skirt that hugged her curves, leaving no room for imagination regarding her ass. Her legs were bare, and she was wearing very small, high-heeled ankle boots. Her hair was styled so that the blue strands blended harmoniously with the black ones, adding tone to her hairstyle. She looked amazing. "So your wife is back in your cabin and depressed, and you're going on a date?" Emma asked. "Fits me," I said. Emma looked shocked. "Emma, once. Again, I spent last night in jail while she walked. Danced and drank at my expense. I don't do anything that she didn't do first." "But Cal, you're better than her," Emma said. "Okay, Emma," I said. "I'm doing this for you, not for her. Tell her that I will meet her after breakfast tomorrow." "Thanks, Cal," Emma said, smiling, and she turned to leave. She looked back at Sky. "Emma," I said when she was at the door, "stay away from sailors." She blushed again. "So you have a lot of stuff here," Sky said. "Do you think so?" I answered. "I have ways of making you talk," she said in response. "But for now, I'm hungry. Call one of the guards to bring us food. I might go if they don't come back soon enough." I took her hand. "Or we could just go ourselves," I said. "I am free." She looked down at the front of my pants. "Not yet," she said, "but the night is young." It turned out to be the best night of the cruise. Moreover, it was the best night of my life. We had lunch at the restaurant, which was a little fancier than any we'd been to before. Several people looked at us as we ate. A good number of them gave me the thumbs-up gesture, but there were one or two who simply hid behind their menus and stared at us. After that, we just walked around the ship. And you know, this may sound sentimental, but when Sky took my hand while we walked, it was the most pleasant thing I've ever experienced. "Damn," I said. "Now what?" she teased. "My sense of time is terrible," I said. "No, it's more than that," she said. "It's like fate. We just fell into it. Think about it. I met an asshole. I put up with him for 4 years. I bought him beer and paid for his stupid car and got engaged to him. I did all this to end up leaving him at the altar and going on this cruise alone to meet you. You dated a gold digger for 2 years so you could marry her and go on this cruise to meet me. You're from California, I'm from Arkansas. If it weren't for such a strange coincidence, we would never have met. Everything was perfect throughout the evening. We walked around the decks and went into a few smaller, quieter clubs. For the first time in my life, I understood what it was all about. I felt closer to Sky than to any other person I had ever known. We ended the night sitting in our lounge chairs, looking up at the night stars and talking about our hopes and dreams. I walked her to her cabin, and as I turned to leave, she grabbed my hand and pulled me towards her for my first real kiss. Kissing Sky made everything I've ever done with anyone else seem like a waste of time. It was much more special than just lips touching another woman's lips. It was like fire, like electricity, like everything I needed to survive, combined into one action. The only thing I could say was, Jimi fucking Hendrix. What? Said Sky. Wait, you said you didn't like Jimi Hendrix. Not anymore, I said. He sings my theme song. Okay, what's your theme song? She laughed. Excuse me while I kiss that Sky, I said. That's not the title of the song, she said. It is called. I interrupted her by pressing my lips to hers again. This time the kiss was longer and even more passionate. I love this song, she said as we pulled away for a moment to catch our breath. I returned to the security office as if on wings. The guard sitting at the desk looked up as I entered. Looks like you had a good time, he said. Oh, yes, I said. I set my iPhone to wake me up at 5:45 a.m. and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I felt great. Even though I slept less than 6 hours, I felt ready for new challenges. I noticed a little stiffness in my back. The bed I slept on was far from comfortable. This was probably to be expected, given that it was just a bed in a security office and not a real bed. I rummaged through my suitcases and found my running shoes, shorts, and a tank top. I ran out into the corridor and then returned to the room. I forgot my socks and my iPod. I ran across several decks until I reached the track. I looked around and didn't see Sky anywhere. I thought about it and realized that we both had less than 6 hours of sleep. Yesterday was an emotional roller coaster for both of us. I started the day at my lowest emotional point ever. I was locked in the security room. My wife apparently spent the entire night clubbing with another man while I was there. And this was in addition to the fact that I had found out the day before that she was only interested in me for financial security. By the end of that day, however, I was sure that I had truly fallen in love for the first time in my life. So maybe I felt like I could fly, but that didn't mean Sky felt the same way. She was probably still asleep in her bed. I clipped my iPod to the waistband of my shorts and plugged the headphones into my ears. I was just about to start running when I felt someone push me on the shoulder. I looked into Sky's beaming face. Seeing her again overwhelmed me. So you weren't going to wait for me at all, huh? She asked, smiling. I didn't think you'd want to get up this early, I said. I didn't want to either, she said. But, I really wanted to see you, she mumbled. What? I said. It was difficult for me to look at her. She really was beautiful. And the strange thing about it was that it was 6 in the morning, and she was already so beautiful. She had just gotten out of bed, put on her clothes, and was already so beautiful. Danielle needed at least an hour to make her face and hair presentable. Sky was very unpretentious. Should we just run? She asked. No, I smiled. What did you say? I have ways of making you talk. Which, for example? She asked. I raised my hands towards her threateningly. I can tickle you to make you talk, I said. That would require you to be able to catch me, of course, she said. Are you suggesting that I can't? I asked. Yes, she said. I think so. I will have a minute-long force start. You can't change direction, so we switch iPods. You should listen to my music, and I should listen to yours. Are you sure about this? I asked. I mean, listening to each other's music is a big step. It's almost like starting a date or something. She laughed and extended her hand. I gave her my iPod Shuffle, and she gave me her iPod Nano. I'll make sure you don't start early, she chuckled. Wait a minute, I said. If I win, you have to tell me what you said. What will you get if you win? You must kiss me like last night again, and whenever I ask, she said. Then she ran. Watching her run away from me, I seriously thought about losing on purpose. After about a minute, I started chasing her. At first, I thought I could just rush forward down the track and catch her. But by the time I got closer, she started running faster too, and I wasn't a sprinter, so I got tired faster than I could catch up with her. I slowed down and she relaxed too. I think I saw her smiling while she was running. I began to slowly close the distance between us. Every time I got close to her, she picked up the pace. After about 4 circles, I was only 20 feet away from her. But every time I started sprinting, she would also speed up. We seemed to be equal. Another circle, and I was only 10 feet away from her. I looked at my watch. We had run about 6 laps, and it was almost 7 minutes, so I knew we had run about a mile. This made me realize that the track we were on was a little smaller than a standard school running track. I usually ran about 5 miles, but we had a lot of adrenaline. Sky seemed to run a little slower. I think the sprints we did earlier wore her down. I was so busy thinking and trying to calculate how long it would take me to catch up with her that I crashed into her. She just stopped running. I crashed into her and we fell together in a heap of arms and legs. Sorry, I said. I rolled off of her. She just smiled and looked at me. Both lay on the rubber flooring as the sun rose. Kiss me, she said. Without hesitation, I complied. The connection was instantly restored. Like 2 magnets, we reached out to each other and connected. Sky's lips smelled like strawberries and fresh peaches. She persistently attracted me. I truly believe we would still be in this hug if some fat guy hadn't walked by panting on the treadmill. How many laps do I need to run to get the same thing? He asked. She kisses everyone who knocks her down. Then he walked past, but turned to look at us. Sky, I said. Yes, she answered, out of breath. I almost caught up with you. If you hadn't stopped, I would have done it, I said. Yes, almost caught up, she said. But do I have to wait all day for you to catch me? But, I began. But you lost, she smiled. Take it with grace. Kiss me. I didn't care about winning or losing anymore. I did what she wanted. Remember, she said, you have to do this every time I ask. Just ask, I said. But you should probably be careful where you ask. Some passengers already think I should be arrested, and I'm sure everyone here knows that I'm still technically married to Danielle. For the first time in my life, I really don't care what people think, she said. So I'll have to tickle you to find out, I asked. What? She asked. You should have told me what you muttered. Remember, I reminded her. I asked you why you got up so early to run. And you muttered something. Did you insult me or something? I said I really wanted to see you, she said. I set the alarm to make sure I woke up. When it worked, I was tired and at the same time full of energy. I went to bed still thinking about how you kissed me last night. I was dying to know if it was real or just the magic of the moment. Kiss me, I said. She pressed her lips to me and then started laughing. You're not supposed to, she laughed. I'm the kissing director here. I am a winner. Only I can do this. Sorry, I said. Kiss me, she said. We showered separately, of course, and met a few minutes later for breakfast. Instead of a quick snack like the first day, or something she could bring me to the security room like the previous morning, it was a nice long breakfast. The ship would be moored at another one of these small islands that dotted the area that morning. This was actually the second island we visited, but we both missed the one yesterday. We decided that we would go ashore and visit some shops and spend time on the beach. Sky was feeding me pieces of her toast when Emma walked up to our table. "Good morning, Cal," she said. Hi," she said to Sky. "Good morning, Emma," I said. I guess there was a little too much enthusiasm in my greeting because Emma looked shocked. "Cal, did you remember that you agreed to talk to Danielle this morning?" she asked. Before I could answer, one of the ship's officers approached me. "Mr. Storm, the captain would like to speak with you when you have the opportunity," he said. "Should I go now?" I asked. "No, sir," he said. "Finish your breakfast. Any time this morning will be fine." When the man left, I wondered what was going on. "I should probably go and talk to him," I said. "Technically, I'm still under house arrest on the ship, so I should probably see if I can go ashore." Emma pursed her lips. "If I can't go ashore, I still want you to go," I told Sky. "Emma, you been to the shore yet?" "Tim had to work," Emma said. "Damn, you two seem to be moving fast," I said. "We're not the only ones," she said sarcastically. "Cal, when are you going to see Danielle?" "Damn, Emma," I said. "I haven't had a chance to have fun since I got on this boat, except yesterday. And most of the time I was locked in the goddamn security room. Yes, I'll go and see Danielle. I promised you that I would do this. I am indebted to you. I'll go and see her right after I talk to the captain. But don't expect a miracle." As I stood up to leave, I told Sky that I would see her in a few minutes. She told me to take my time. I went to the captain's office, and while I was walking, I heard the ship's horn or something like that blowing. This scared me to such an extent that I almost lost my balance. I heard it yesterday, but then I was deep below the decks in the security room, and the sound was not so loud. On the open deck, it was almost deafening. Looking around, I noticed that we were approaching a small island. The ship was too large to dock here, so passengers about to disembark would be transported on small ferries coming from the island. For the first time in a couple of days, I again realized that I was on a ship. It seems like with everything that's been going on, I've gotten used to it. I knocked on the door of the captain's office. The door opened immediately. The captain and one of his officers greeted me as I entered. "Mr. Storm, I want to apologize to you," the captain said. "It was all a big misunderstanding." "Captain, I'm fine. I completely understand everything that happened. You did what was necessary for the benefit of the passengers and your staff," I said. He looked at me strangely. "Then why are you suing me and the company?" he asked. I started laughing. "My lawyer is pretty aggressive," I laughed. "You think this is funny," he said. "Look at this. We are being tried for everything possible, including unlawful imprisonment. Did you know that most of the time you were there, the door wasn't even locked?" "Captain, I will deal with this immediately," I said. "There's one more thing," he said. "Those men you fought with will be taken into custody as soon as they recover from their injuries. They have been identified as part of a group that has been targeting cruise ship passengers for years. They were involved in the beatings of several passengers, but also in several thefts. There are also rumors that they blackmailed several passengers and extorted money from them, but we have very little information about this." "What about the other guy?" I asked. "What other guy?" asked the captain. "The first two were trying to get me away from the guy who was harassing my wife," I said. "If you look at your security footage, you'll see him." "That guy who grinned and grabbed your wife's butt?" asked one of the officers. I nodded. "We haven't seen him since the incident," the captain said. "Do you think he's connected somehow?" "He came to see me yesterday," I said. "He was talking about some business proposal that we needed to discuss. I think he should have come back and talked to me after talking to Danielle." "I'll have someone bring him," said the captain. "Oh, can I go ashore?" I asked. "Of course," said the captain. "All charges against you have been dropped, but I would appreciate it if you could recall your lawyer." A few minutes later, I was a few decks below, standing in front of the cabin I shared with Danielle. I knocked on the door. A few moments later, Emma opened it. I followed her into the room. "You don't have to knock on the door, Cal," Emma said. "This is your cabin too." "Cal, I'm so sorry," Danielle said sadly when she saw me. "I didn't plan any of this. Everything somehow grew on its own, and everything got out of control. Now I'm really in trouble." "So how does this affect me?" I asked. "I was locked in for most of the cruise. I'm not in trouble anymore." "But we are married," she said. "When one of us is in trouble, we are both in trouble. We must overcome difficulties together." "Daniel, let's figure it out," I said. "First of all, why did I go to jail?" I paused and looked at her. She didn't seem to want to say anything. "I ended up in jail on our honeymoon cruise because you decided to act like a whore for the entire ship. You let some guy grope you in public while I was around. It was insulting to me and did not add to your reputation. When I went to that guy, you were standing next to him. You didn't rush to my aid, as a wife should have done. Daniel, you stood next to him." Her head dropped. "Cal, I'm sorry," she said. "While I was locked up that night, you never came to me or even asked about me. Daniel, you were in the clubs on the ship, drinking and spending my money on a guy who hugged your ass. Emma came to see me that night and several times the next day. Emma and I barely know each other, but she came. I didn't hear anything from you at all, Daniel, until you spent all the money in the account you had access to." "But Cal, I was mad at you," she said. "This is not the way it should be." "Daniel, this goes way beyond you being angry," I said. I still tried to keep my cards close to my chest. "By the time you decided to come to me, I already knew who my real friends were. You spent the entire time on the ship with that guy, doing things no married woman should do, especially when her husband is locked up because of her actions." "But you hurt my feelings, Cal," she said. "I was just trying to get back at you and things got out of control. And then I was so ashamed, and everyone looked at me like I was a worm. The only one who made me feel good was Eduardo, and he was worse than everyone else," she said. "This is not what I wanted," she said. "I love you, Cal. This was supposed to be the beginning of our common life. Coming on that damn boat was the biggest mistake of my life. I just want us to go back to how it was before, when we were just planning our life together. This is the worst honeymoon. Can't we just start over?" "Sometimes things happen for a reason," I said. "Maybe this was what we needed to show that we were just not right for each other. Daniel, you seem to believe that spouses should be together and help each other through difficulties, correct?" "Absolutely," she said very quickly. "Then where were you when I was in trouble?" I asked. I waited for a while, and she just started crying. "So why do you expect me to drop everything because you did something stupid?" I asked. There was silence again. "Daniel, what's your problem?" I asked. "You talked to Eduardo yesterday, didn't you?" she asked. "Yeah, it was all I could do not to hit him," I said. "So he didn't tell you?" she asked. "No, we barely spoke," I said. "I think he wants to talk to me again today, but all he said yesterday was that he and I have to discuss something financial, so it's probably best for you to tell me." "I can't," she said. "You'll be angry." "Okay, goodbye then," I said. "I'm going to the shore." "But Cal, what about my problem?" she wailed. "That's your problem," I snapped. "Neither you nor Eduardo want to tell me what's going on. It doesn't concern me, so why should I worry?" "Cal, it's not my fault," she began. "I wanted our honeymoon to be perfect. It started off so beautifully. Then you got sick, so we didn't make love that first night. I wanted us to have a baby on this cruise. I thought we could do it in 5 days easily because we wouldn't leave our cabin except to eat and shop. So, okay, the first night didn't go according to plan. I just decided that we could catch up the next day. I wanted you to come back and make love to me before dinner, and then we could continue when we got back." I nodded, remembering how it all began. "But Cal, You didn't come back to the room when I called you. I sat here waiting for you for over an hour in my most beautiful, sexy lingerie, and you never came back to our room. By the time you got here, it was already too late. I tried to control my anger, but you know I can't do that. I probably should have talked to you, but I didn't, so judge me. Everyone at our table couldn't take their eyes off me. Everyone noticed how beautiful I am, except you, she said. Her face seemed distorted. You even danced with that ugly old woman and left me sitting at the table. Then Eduardo came up and asked me to dance. At first, I didn't pay attention to him. I continued to look for you. I think he noticed this and asked me if I really wanted to get your attention. He told me that he can help me make you very jealous and horny. So I said, okay. He started dancing much closer to me and positioned us so that we were right in front of you. I saw the look on your face and thought it was working. Not only you, but everyone in the room was looking at us. Then he grabbed my ass. I saw you heading towards us, and I expected you to come and take me, saying that I was your woman, not his. But then those two men stood in front of you, and you. Well, I guess no one else will try to get between you and what you want on this cruise. Then security grabbed you, and everyone was looking at me again. But this time they looked at me like I was the pathetic slut who had caused all this. Eduardo took me out of there and told me that I needed to get away from these people. They all blamed me for something that was actually something you caused. We went to a club and had a few drinks. After a few drinks, we danced again. Eduardo convinced me to do a few dances. He said that you would be sent back to our cabin and that you were very angry. He thought I should wait a while for you to calm down before trying to explain all this to you. I don't know how many drinks we drank. He kept dragging me from one place to another. Finally, I woke up, and it was the next morning. I was in his room, and we had sex. I didn't know where my clothes were, so I took a sheet and went back to our cabin. The next day, I went out on deck, and most of the people I encountered weren't talking to me. Even the crew members were polite to me, but cold. Eduardo tried to talk to me, but I didn't talk to him. I spent a lot of money that night, and I remember that he persuaded me to withdraw several amounts, but when I tried to use our bank card yesterday, it was empty. Eduardo asked me for money. I tried to explain to him that I don't have them. Then he started trying to persuade me to ask you for more money. When I refused, he showed me the video file on his laptop. It was me with a lot of men. He says if I don't get him $20,000, he'll post the video on the internet. All my friends will see this. While I was sleeping, he looked through my phone and got my entire contact list. Everyone is there, including my parents. He says he will send the video to everyone. We have to do something. If this video goes viral, it will embarrass both of us. We're married, you know. Then I did a really stupid thing. I told him that you can easily get more than $20,000. It will be nothing. So he decided to talk to you since you weren't talking to me. Now he wants $50,000. Please give him the money. I swear to you, I will never let this happen again. I've never cheated on you in all the time we've been dating. I really need to take anger management classes or something. I'm so sorry, I just stood there, looking at her. I tried my best not to smile, like the conversation with Emma that revealed to me that she had been cheating on me before the cruise and throughout our relationship. I anticipated and recorded this conversation on my iPhone. I knew she was probably lying again, but I didn't care. It was one more piece of evidence that could be used against her if I needed a divorce. I was sure that Eduardo would claim that events had turned out differently, but it would be interesting to see what he had to say. Daniel, I have a question for you, I said as she sat on the bed, sobbing. I looked at her and realized several things. First, Danielle had all the qualities that made her attractive to a certain type of man, but that was just appearance. Her beauty was largely the result of makeup and even some plastic surgery. Like I said, she had a nose job, a lip job, and even after all that, sitting there on the bed, she wasn't as attractive as Sky had just woken up that morning. The second thing I realized was that Danielle, sitting in front of me, sobbing and miserable, barely touched me. Any love I once felt for her, if there ever was any, was gone. I actually have two questions, I said. The first is whether I still love you, she said, and the answer is yes. Cal, I've never loved anyone else. The second question is whether I regret getting angry with you and losing control. The answer to this question is also yes. These are not my questions, I said. My first question is, since you have done absolutely nothing for me in the last 2 days while I was in trouble, why do you expect me to lift my finger for you now? She opened her mouth in shock. She had a hard time believing that I wouldn't give up everything and do whatever she wanted, like I always did before. She didn't say anything, but I could tell her mind was trying to come up with a convenient lie or a way to make this all my fault. My second question, I continued while she was still trying to comprehend the first. My second question is, should we even be married to each other? Since we boarded the ship, you've had sex with I don't know how many men, but none of them were me. This happened less than 2 days after our wedding. Why should I even consider spending the rest of my life with someone like you? But Cal, we can overcome this. I know we can. And we can have sex right now. These guys meant nothing. There was nothing special about it. I don't even remember them or who they are, she said plaintively. So now you want me to risk contracting a disease just to make you feel better? I asked. I have a lot to think about. Maybe I'll see you later. As I left the cabin, I heard Danielle asking me where I was going. Emma was waiting for me outside. Cal, where are you going? Emma asked. She knows what she did. Can't you cut her some slack? She's really sorry. She sees what she can lose. That's why she cries like a baby. She loves you as much as ever. Wow, Emma, I said. You really phrased it correctly. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, you put it in a way that not only defends what your friend wants, but also doesn't lie to me. We both know how Daniel really feels about me. We both know how she always felt about me, don't we? Emma looked down. So is it bad that I moved on and found someone who actually cares about me? I asked her. What do you mean? She asked. Danny. Her voice trailed off as she said it. See you later, Emma, I said. I headed to the security room to change clothes. Along the way, I noticed someone hiding in the corridor a few aisles away. It was Eduardo. He saw me and looked around as if he was hiding from someone or something. You made a decision, he said. When can you get money? I already have them, I said. All I would have to do is transfer money from one account to another. Well, hurry up and do it, he said. I have urgent business elsewhere. He acted like he was doing me a favor. Listen, don't let me keep you, I said. I'm not going to give you a damn thing. He looked shocked. What do you mean? He asked. You really don't want your wife to be exposed on the internet for everyone to see, do you? The only time I would care, I said, with an ominous glint in my eyes, would be if I intended to stay married to her. If that were the case, you should have been worried, because I would have broken your ass, just like your two friends. He took a step back. So just do what you're going to do. 25,000, he said. I just shook my head and headed to the security office. 20, he asked. Isn't your wife's good name worth $15,000? There are hard-working people who work their butts off every day and barely make $15,000 a year, I said sharply. Why should I give you $15,000 so you don't tell the world that you seduced some woman? I wouldn't give you $5 and a Slurpee coupon to protect her good name. Look for another fool. You'll regret this, he said. Why should I regret this? I asked. Actually, you work for me, fool. You post your video, and it will only make it easier for me to divorce her stupid ass. I should probably pay you to let him out. With that, I walked away, leaving him standing there. I changed into a loose shirt to keep me cool in the heat and a pair of long shorts. I grabbed my sunglasses and some sunscreen and headed out to find Sky. An hour later, Sky and I were sitting in sun loungers on the beach. We saw a ship moored further out in the ocean, but enjoyed the sun and each other's company. We drank fruity drinks with deceptively high levels of alcohol and laughed at the antics of the crabs and tourists. One person seemed especially funny to us. What makes a 50-year-old accountant from Boise with a beer belly and no coordination think he can surf or parasail because a 20-year-old local without an ounce of body fat tells him it's easy? Luckily, no one was hurt during a day of action-packed adventures. Later, we got up and walked along the embankment, holding hands, browsing the shops, and buying a few souvenirs. We returned to the ship after a very calm day to find the ship in turmoil. As soon as we boarded, one of the security staff called me aside. I immediately thought that the captain had not had time to inform them that I was allowed to move freely. "Mr. Sir Storm," the security officer said, "you need to see the captain as soon as possible." "I thought I was acquitted," I said. He looked at me as if I was behind the times. "It seems like a lot has changed in the last few hours. Those guys you beat up were convicted of a number of crimes on this ship and others. That guy who danced with your wife was also involved in several crimes. The ship's crew, local authorities, the cruise line, and the U.S. government are searching for him. Looks like someone sent a photo of him, and he was recognized." "I sent a photo of this asshole to my lawyer," I said. "I wanted to be able to know him if I needed him for a divorce." "Well, your photograph has raised alarm bells among the authorities," he said. Your wife also has a problem. Several crew members and passengers saw it on the internet. Rumors spread throughout the ship. Luckily for us, we're heading home tonight. We'll be in Los Angeles by this time tomorrow. There's a formal farewell dance tonight. The captain has asked that your wife remain in her cabin for the remainder of the cruise. Many passengers are outraged by her behavior. The captain was hoping you could help sort it out." I took Sky's hand and headed to the bridge to find the captain. He asked me when was the last time I saw Eduardo. I told him about our last meeting and my refusal to pay. It seems Eduardo jumped ship with one of the shore parties and has long since disappeared. I sent the captain the photo Eduardo took so he could send it to all ships and local authorities. That way they can recognize him. As a final blow, it appears that Eduardo has posted photos and videos of Danielle online as promised. I didn't know if he sent them to her contacts or not. The captain expressed regret for any humiliation or trouble this may have caused. I shrugged. "To show that we have no hard feelings," he said, "I would like you to join my dinner table tonight for a formal dance." I nodded. "And please bring your girlfriend," he added. A few hours later, I asked Sky if she wanted to eat dinner at the captain's table. "Who will I sit with?" she asked. "With me, of course," I said. "In that case, let me see what I can wear," she smiled. "Kiss me?" I became more and more glad that somehow I lost that bet. When dinner time approached, I returned to my cabin. I knocked on the door. Emma let me in. Danielle curled up on the bed. She looked terrible. "She's afraid to come out and show her face," Emma said. "You look good," I told Emma. "Tim and I will go out tonight since he doesn't have a prisoner to guard," she said, laughing. "Me too," I said. "I'm going to a gala dinner, and I will sit at the captain's table again." "Ooh," she laughed. "They wouldn't let me in there," Danielle said from her corner. "All those boring old people refused to let me sit there after the night you got arrested. To hell with them. Why would you want to be with them?" "Daniel, it seemed important to you to sit there the night we did it," I said. "Well, why can't you stay with me?" she said. "We need to talk about what we're doing and how we're going to handle it when we get home tomorrow night." "Doesn't it matter to you?" she asked. "My parents don't even want to talk to me. You have to explain to them that it's not my fault. They love you. They'll listen to you." "Cal, and what would we do if our friends saw this video?" "None of this concerns me, Daniel," I said. "Cal, ever since this started, you've been angry with me. I see this because when you're angry, you call me Danielle as if I'm a stranger. You haven't called me Danny since this started. We need to decide how we will deal with this. I have an idea, but you won't like it. Remember that banking job you turned down in Seattle? There's also one in Boston. We could start from scratch, where no one knows us. Emma, you could. Move there too. Danny, there's something you should know, Emma said. What? Danielle asked. I'm not coming home, Emma said. Tim asked me to move into his cabin and stay on the ship with him. He's going to get me a job on the crew. We take each other pretty seriously. I thought that since you got married, I still wouldn't be able to pay for our apartment myself. So don't worry about what I do. I'm home now. That's great, Emma, Danielle said sharply. Thank you for warning me. Either way, it doesn't matter. Cal and I are the ones who have to solve this problem. Bon voyage, Emma. Well, I think you can think about it for a while, I said. I'm going to dinner. I left them both in the cabin. I knocked on the door to Sky's cabin, but no one answered. I texted her, and she said she would be a little late for dinner, but would meet me there. I went to the main restaurant. As I walked up to the table and sat down, I noticed that there were several couples who were there the first time Daniel and I sat. Most of them greeted me warmly and said they were glad I was back. One woman told me that it's better to be alone, and it's actually good that I learned so quickly what type of woman Danielle is. The McBrides were there too. Mrs. McBride told me that they complained to the captain when I was arrested. I was sure I knew this name from somewhere. I suddenly realized that she and her husband owned a large stake in the company I worked for. I've seen them going to shareholder meetings several times. She told me to save the dance for her because she was sure that many women there would want to dance with me. I thanked her for her kindness and said that I was sure that the women on the ship were mostly already occupied. Don't underestimate yourself, honey, she said. You are a young, handsome man. You have a great job, and you have a great future ahead of you. You just feel bad because you chose the wrong woman the first time. You need someone like that. She pointed to the woman who was slowly crossing the floor. As she approached, I stood up and my jaw dropped. Her black and blue hair was neatly pulled back and had glitter in it. She wore a very beautiful shoulderless dress. The dress was a very dark blue. It was both feminine and very form-fitting. It was difficult for me to look away from her. As she approached us, her face lit up with a smile. She came up to us. Mr. Storm, she said. May I ask you to dance? She made a small curtsy. All eyes in the hall were focused on us. No music, Sky, I said. She raised one hand, and the DJ played a CD. I chose this song especially for us, she said. I recognized the song immediately when she led me onto the dance floor. It was Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Jefferson Starship. The song was one of those 80s rock ballads that always played at the end of 80s movies. But it didn't matter, it fit. I took her hand and we went out onto the dance floor. I held her very close to me and we spun and spun. We were soon joined by several other couples, including Tim, the security guard, and Emma, who winked at me and shook her head. No chance? Emma asked, walking past us. I shook my head. After a few dances, we sat down at the table. I introduced Sky to everyone present, and we spent a pleasant evening talking and listening to others talk about their experiences during the 5-day trip. We missed most of it, Sky said. Then we'll just have to do another cruise, I told her. She asked. I looked at her as if she had gone crazy. Of course we are, I said. Do you think I'm just kissing someone like that? She just smiled and looked at me. Between the main course and dessert, the captain took me aside and told me that Eduardo had not yet been caught. Local police were unable to find him anywhere in the city. He has been seen several times, and they are confident that he will not be able to leave the island. After dinner, Sky and I took our usual walk to Stargaze and just enjoyed the evening. As we approached the stern of the ship, we heard music from one of the clubs. I just took Sky into my arms and we started dancing to this music. What will happen now? She asked. Well, normally this would be the part where I would knock you over, I said. But people don't do that anymore. I meant us. Fool, she said. What will happen to us? As I was preparing to say what I had been thinking about all evening, a voice interrupted us. What will happen, homewrecker, is that my husband will come back to our cabin with me so we can sort this mess out. It was Danielle. She was really angry. I see what's happening, she blurted out. I became a victim, and you use it as an excuse to cheat. Cal, I expected more from you. Is this your philosophy? An eye for an eye? I've had sex with others, so can you do it too? Is this how we will conduct our marriage? I just smiled at her. Daniel, I really don't think we'll be married much longer, I said. She looked like she'd been hit in the face with a brick. She started walking towards us. What the hell do you mean? Cal, she blurted out. When I talked to Emma, she told me that you have a little friend. And after what happened to me, even if it wasn't my fault, I thought you could indulge in a little romance on the ship to soften the blow of my actions a little. But I never agreed to leave our marriage. I think I can really appreciate a little spice in our lives, but there's no way I'm giving up on you. And there really is no comparison between me and her. You'd have to be crazy to choose her over me. She can't even wear my bra, let alone fit into it. Daniel, that's the problem with you, I said softly. You only see things the way you want to see them. Sky has already surpassed you in many ways, and you don't even begin to understand it. I'm just not the kind of person who wants to be with someone who needs some spice on the side. If I'm not enough for you, we shouldn't be together. And let's face it, you don't love me, and I don't love you. What do you mean I don't love you? She asked. I raised my finger in silence and took my iPhone out of my pocket. I held the phone up so she could hear it and put it on speaker. Emma, why are you looking at me like that? Danielle's voice came from the phone. Damn, it's not my fault. I dated so many guys who only wanted one thing that I thought it was time for me to get something in return. Danielle's eyes popped out of her head. Where are you from? She began. What do you mean you still haven't stopped sleeping with other guys, huh? Emma's recorded voice continued. What I do when he's not around is none of his business, the recorded Danielle said. But the real Danielle faltered, realizing she was in trouble. Damn, Emma, the recorded Danielle said. When I'm done with it, I'll try to arrange it so you can have it. I just want to live my life and have fun. I just want to have what I want, and I don't want to work like a slave to get it. I saw my chance and took it. Cal, I was just talking, Danielle said. I was joking with Emma. It didn't mean anything. I love you. You know it. I took Sky's arm and we left. So where are we? I asked her. Cal, I'm not going to take this lying down, Danielle shouted behind us. I won't give you a divorce. I'll make it worse. I'll hire a lawyer and take every damn penny you have. She continued screaming until we were far enough away that we couldn't hear her. So what did you mean? Sky asked. Well, I have a big apartment in California, I began. It's really too big for one person. I would love it if someone moved in with me. I'm really in no rush to go home to Arkansas, she said. I could probably consider it if the offer was attractive enough. You could go back to school and decide what you want to do, I suggested. It sounds tempting, she said. But how will I pay for it? You've been taking care of your useless boyfriend for years, I said. I'll take care of you for a while. This is starting to sound good, she said. What about the car? What car? I asked. Your ex's Charger. I'm sure he's already talked some woman into fixing it. We'll take a car ride, I said. We'll drive through your hometown and I'll fight his Charger and win. My Mustang will beat his Charger. Okay, she said, looking at me seriously. You're not going to force me to have sex with you, are you? Of course not, I said. It seemed to me that even her kisses would be enough, at least for a while. Well, Then I won't go, she said. Why would I live with a man I don't have sex with? Okay, if I have to, I said ironically. I will do this, but only for you, and only because I love you, Sky. Yes, I actually said it, and I was the first to say it. This time I really felt it, and I knew it was true. I finally understood what love is. I love you too, she said. I've loved you since the first time we ran together. That's why I just stopped, so that you crash into me and we meet. I just knew there was something special between us. She just stood there smiling at me. But, Cal, we can't do anything until you at least start divorce proceedings, she said. And I really want this, really, a long time ago. So tomorrow evening, I said. She looked at me curiously. My lawyer is 90% sure the annulment will go through, I said. I sent him a copy of the recording that I played. I have also uploaded a copy of that video. The judge will likely make a decision by tomorrow evening. Danielle will be served notice of the impending cancellation as soon as she disembarks the ship tomorrow afternoon. The next afternoon, Sky and I left the ship and carried our bags to the parking structure. We were among the first to leave. Sky only had 2 suitcases. Her luggage easily fit in the trunk of my Mustang, while mine was in the back seat. Watching from the parking lot, we saw Emma hug Danielle goodbye. Danielle began walking down the ramp, dragging her suitcase while a couple of sailors carried her other bags. When she reached street level, there was a girl waiting for her. She looked like a student. She seemed bored, and I think she was chewing gum. Danielle looked at her and nodded her head. The girl handed her a folder with documents. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Daniel sitting on his suitcase, crying. Emma ran to console her. A few days later, just as Sky and I were heading out on our trip, I got a call from Danielle. She lived again with her parents and was unhappy. She begged me to reverse the annulment and give her another chance. I laughed so hard I couldn't hold the phone. Sky and I went to Benton, Arkansas. While we were there, I met her parents. We drove around town until we came across an orange Dodge Charger with a General Lee paint job. All the headlights were still broken. The paint was scratched, but it appeared to be in good condition. The guy driving looked like he hadn't shaved in days and seemed out of sorts. There was a crowd of guys around him shouting and supporting the idea of the race. Assumed they were his friends. He didn't see Sky in the car next to me. We were standing at a traffic light. When the light turned red, we both took off. It wasn't even a race. I beat him to the next traffic light by more than 2 car lengths. Cool car, he said. Hey, Bubba, Sky said mockingly. See you. Sky and I feel great. We got married as soon as the annulment was completed. Danielle tried to block him. She told the judge that we had already had sex, so the marriage was consummated. I reminded her that we didn't really do this after we got married. The judge also had a copy of all my evidence. The judge granted the annulment. He told Danielle that the recorded conversation alone would be enough to convince him, especially since Emma signed an affidavit confirming that the conversation actually took place. Eduardo was eventually caught. He found a way to return to the ship secretly and was caught by security while the ship was in port a few days later. For those who think Danielle didn't deserve it, don't worry too much about her. She eventually became famous. Her internet video went viral, and she started a new career. As the Pilgrim and many of my favorite writers say, life goes on. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. 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 Listening to the next one.